Marcus Reynolds stood frozen in the airport terminal, watching the airline staff who had humiliated him minutes ago now being publicly fired. Passengers gasped as the regional manager's voice echoed through the terminal. Marcus's vindication felt hollow as he spotted a familiar face lurking behind a column. Richard Whitman, smirking coldly. This victory was just the beginning of something far more dangerous. The battle lines were drawn, but how could Marcus know the true cost of standing up for his rights? Before we continue this shocking story, let us know where you're watching from. If you believe in justice and standing up against discrimination, hit that like and subscribe button to stay updated on more stories that expose the truth. 3 years earlier, Marcus Reynolds sat in his corner office overlooking the Atlanta skyline. The 42-year-old CEO of Innovate Tech had come a long way from the housing projects of South Chicago. The walls displayed his Harvard business school diploma alongside photos with tech luminaries and political figures. His company, specializing in artificial intelligence solutions for healthcare, had recently been valued at $2 billion. Marcus straightened his custom-tailored suit as his assistant Layla knocked on the door. "Your 10 o'clock is here," she announced, "and congratulations on making Forbes' most innovative leaders list." He smiled warmly. "Thanks, Layla. Though, I noticed they put me on page 3 while Jason Miller's company got the cover story, despite our revenue being double theirs." "Their loss," Layla replied, having worked with Marcus long enough to recognize the subtle discrimination he faced daily. Just last week, a potential client had mistaken him for the IT support during a video call. The month before, security had stopped him entering his own company's partnership event until a white colleague vouched for him. Later that afternoon, Marcus reviewed the presentation for potential investors from Westridge Capital. This San Francisco meeting could secure a $500 million investment to expand Innovate Tech's AI diagnostic platform globally. He needed to be perfectly prepared. "Your flight is confirmed for tomorrow morning," Layla said, handing him the itinerary. "First-class upgrade confirmed so you can work during the flight." "Perfect," Marcus replied, not knowing this routine business trip would change everything. The next morning at Atlanta's Hartsfield-Jackson International Airport, Marcus moved efficiently through the terminal in his perfectly pressed suit. Despite having TSA pre-check and priority boarding as a frequent first-class passenger, a security agent pulled him aside. "Random additional screening, sir," the agent said, though Marcus noticed several white businessmen with similar status walking through without interruption. "I have pre-check," Marcus explained calmly, showing his boarding pass. "It's random, sir," the agent repeated with a tone suggesting it was anything but random. 20 minutes later, after an unnecessarily thorough search of his carry-on and a pat-down that felt more invasive than protocol required, Marcus rushed to his gate. The final boarding call echoed through the terminal as he sprinted the last 100 yards, arriving breathless as the gate agent was about to close the door. "You're lucky," she said without looking up. "Another minute and you'd have missed your flight." Marcus didn't bother explaining why he was late. He'd learned long ago that some battles weren't worth fighting. But as he walked down the jetway, a sense of unease settled over him. He couldn't know that this random screening was just the beginning of a systematic attempt to derail not just his trip, but his entire career. Marcus settled into seat 2A in the first-class cabin, placing his briefcase under the seat in front of him. He needed these 4 hours to finalize his presentation, and the extra space and quiet of first class were essential. As other passengers boarded, flight attendant Brenda Wilson approached. "Ticket, please," she demanded, despite having already scanned his boarding pass at the gate. Marcus showed his digital boarding pass again. Brenda scrutinized it longer than necessary before moving on without a word. 10 minutes later, she returned. "Are you sure you're in the right seat?" she asked, loudly enough for nearby passengers to hear. "Yes," Marcus replied calmly, showing his boarding pass a third time. "Seat 2A." Brenda nodded curtly and left again. Marcus opened his laptop, trying to focus on his presentation. The final first-class passengers were boarding when a commotion caught his attention. Richard Whitman, a middle-aged white man in an expensive suit, stood in the aisle arguing with another flight attendant. "I always sit in 2A. Check again," he demanded. The flight attendant approached Marcus with Richard close behind. Sir, there seems to be a problem with the seating arrangement. Before Marcus could respond, Richard interrupted. That's my seat. There must be a mistake. Marcus displayed his boarding pass yet again. I have a confirmed assignment for 2A. Richard scoffed. Look, I'm a Diamond Medallion member. I fly this route weekly. I always get 2A. I understand, sir, Marcus replied professionally. But I also have status, and my assistant confirmed this seat yesterday. Brenda returned with the lead flight attendant, Thomas Parker. Neither addressed Marcus directly. What seems to be the problem? Thomas asked Richard. This gentleman is in my seat, Richard stated as if it were fact. Marcus maintained his composure. I have a confirmed first-class ticket for this seat. Thomas barely glanced at Marcus's boarding pass. Sir, perhaps there's been a misunderstanding. We can find you another seat in economy. There's no misunderstanding, Marcus insisted. I'm in my assigned seat with a confirmed upgrade. The situation escalated as Richard grew more agitated. I have an important meeting in San Francisco. I need my usual seat. So do I, Marcus replied. And I'm not giving up my properly assigned seat. Thomas's expression hardened. Sir, if you continue to be difficult, I'll need to call security. Difficult? Marcus asked incredulously. I'm simply sitting in my assigned seat. More passengers were watching now, some recording with their phones. The confrontation was drawing unwanted attention, but Marcus refused to be bullied. Thomas spoke into his radio, and minutes later, an air marshal appeared. What's the situation? He asked. This passenger is being disruptive and refusing crew instructions, Thomas claimed. That's absolutely false, Marcus protested. I'm simply occupying my assigned seat. The air marshal stood over Marcus. Sir, I need you to come with me now. On what grounds? Marcus asked. Interfering with flight crew duties, came the response. As Marcus was escorted off the plane, Richard Whitman smirked and slid into seat 2A. Have you ever faced discrimination that left you speechless? Comment number 1 if you believe Marcus should have refused to leave his seat. Comment number 2 if you think he made the right choice to avoid escalation. And if you believe that standing up against injustice is important no matter the cost, hit that like button and subscribe to our channel for more stories of courage in the face of discrimination. But what happens when standing up for yourself puts everything you've worked for at risk? How would Marcus fight back when the system itself seemed designed to keep him down? In the airport terminal, Marcus stood in disbelief as passengers from the flight approached him. That was totally wrong, said a young woman named Jessica. I recorded everything. Do you want me to send you the video? Marcus nodded, still processing what had just happened. Jessica wasn't the only one who had documented the incident. 3 other passengers offered their recordings, exchanging contact information with Marcus. You should put this online, suggested a man who introduced himself as Dave Chen. People need to see this. Marcus hesitated. As a CEO, he was always careful about his public image. But this injustice burned inside him. He called Layla. They did what? Layla exclaimed after Marcus explained the situation. That's blatant discrimination. I know, Marcus replied. Several passengers recorded it. They're sending me the videos now. I'm activating our PR team, Layla said, and I'm booking you on the next flight to San Francisco. By the time Marcus reached the rebooking counter, Jessica's video had already been uploaded to Twitter with the hashtag #FlyingWhileBlack. Within an hour, it had 50,000 views. The airline representative avoided eye contact as she checked her computer. The next direct flight is full, but I can get you on a connecting flight through Dallas. That would make me miss my investor meeting, Marcus explained. I'm sorry, sir. That's all we have, she replied disinterestedly. Marcus booked the connecting flight, knowing he'd have to reschedule the critical meeting with Westridge Capital. As he walked away, his phone buzzed with notifications. The video had surpassed 100,000 views and was being picked up by news outlets. His company's social media manager called. Mr. Reynolds, we're getting hundreds of media inquiries. What's our official response? Marcus found a quiet corner in the terminal. Tell them I was wrongfully removed from my confirmed seat due to racial profiling, and we're exploring all options to address this injustice. As Marcus considered his next move, his phone rang with an unknown number. It was Taylor Wilson, CEO of Rivertech, a competitor who had tried to poach Marcus several times. "Marcus, I just saw what happened. Disgraceful. Listen, my private jet is at Teterboro. I can have it in Atlanta in 2 hours to get you to your meeting." The offer surprised Marcus. Was it genuine concern or opportunism? Either way, it would solve his immediate problem. "I appreciate that, Taylor. But what's the catch?" Taylor chuckled. "No catch. Just a joint press release saying Rivertech stands against discrimination. Good publicity for us, and you make your meeting. Win-win." Marcus considered the offer. It would solve his transportation problem, but aligning with a competitor could raise questions with Westridge Capital. Before he could decide, his phone buzzed with a text from Nathan Brooks, the only black partner at Westridge. "Just saw the video. Disgusting. Don't worry about the meeting. We can reschedule. More importantly, how can we help you fight this?" The support was encouraging, but Marcus knew this incident threatened more than just one meeting. His reputation, his company's stability, and his ability to operate in an industry already challenging for minorities were all at stake. As Marcus weighed his options, the video reached 500,000 views. News vans were arriving at the airport. What had started as a seat dispute was becoming a national conversation about race, privilege, and corporate responsibility. Marcus's phone rang again. Westridge Capital's managing partner. "Marcus, we're all disturbed by what we're seeing. Take the time you need to address this. Our meeting can wait." Just as Marcus began to feel he might navigate this crisis, a notification appeared on his phone. The airline had issued a statement claiming Marcus had been aggressive and non-compliant with crew instructions. They were controlling the narrative, painting him as the troublemaker. The battle was just beginning. 2 hours after the incident, Marcus sat in the airport lounge reviewing the airline's statement with growing anger. They had completely misrepresented what happened, claiming he had repeatedly refused reasonable crew instructions and created a disruptive environment. His phone rang. It was InnovateTech's head of legal, Jamal Washington. "I've reviewed the videos, Marcus. We have a clear case for discrimination and defamation. I'm preparing paperwork now." "Good," Marcus replied. "I want—" He stopped as a woman in an airline executive uniform approached his table, flanked by 2 security officers. "Mr. Reynolds, I'm Sarah Johnson, regional manager for Atlantair. May I speak with you privately?" Marcus kept Jamal on the line. "Whatever you have to say can be said in front of my attorney." Sarah's smile tightened. "Very well. We regret the misunderstanding earlier today. To compensate for your inconvenience, I'm authorized to offer you vouchers for 5 free first-class flights and 10,000 bonus miles." Marcus stared at her incredulously. "Misunderstanding? Your staff racially profiled me, publicly humiliated me, and falsely accused me of being disruptive. Then your company issued a statement painting me as the aggressor. And you think vouchers will make this go away?" Sarah lowered her voice. "Mr. Reynolds, we both know these incidents can spiral out of control in today's social media environment. This offer lets everyone save face." "Everyone except me," Marcus replied. "I want a public apology, disciplinary action for the staff involved, and a retraction of your false statement." Sarah's professional demeanor cracked. "That's not going to happen. Take the vouchers or don't, but understand this. Passengers who cause problems can find themselves on no-fly lists. That would be unfortunate for someone who travels as frequently as you do." Was she threatening him? "Are you recording this, Jamal?" Marcus asked into his phone. Sarah realized her mistake too late. "I didn't mean to imply—" "You didn't imply. You threatened me," Marcus interrupted. "Jamal, add witness intimidation to our complaint." Sarah stood abruptly. "This conversation is over. Security will escort you to your gate when your flight is ready." As she walked away, Marcus noticed passengers watching from nearby tables. Several gave him subtle nods of support. His momentary triumph was short-lived. 15 minutes later, 2 airport police officers approached his table. "Marcus Reynolds, one asked. Yes? We need you to come with us, sir. A passenger has filed a complaint alleging you made threatening statements on board an aircraft. What? That's absurd, Marcus protested. The officers remained impassive. We just need to take your statement, sir. As Marcus was escorted away, he spotted Richard Whitman, the man who had taken his seat, standing near the security office with Sarah Johnson. They were talking intently, and Richard pointed directly at Marcus as he passed. In the security office, Marcus was told that Richard claimed he had felt physically threatened when Marcus aggressively refused to vacate his seat. It was a complete fabrication, but it was now Marcus's word against Richard's, and apparently, the airline was backing Richard's version. The police took Marcus's statement, but the process dragged on for nearly 2 hours, causing him to miss his connecting flight. Whether intentional or not, the airline and Richard Whitman had managed to derail his travel plans completely. When Marcus was finally released, he discovered his checked luggage, containing his backup presentation materials, was accidentally sent to Los Angeles. His corporate credit card was suddenly showing as declined when he tried to book another flight, and his phone battery was dying with no charger in sight. The systematic dismantling of his day couldn't be coincidence. Someone wanted to ensure he never made it to that investor meeting in San Francisco. But why? And how had a simple seat assignment escalated into what felt like a coordinated attack on his personal and professional life? As Marcus charged his phone at an airport kiosk, he received a text from an unknown number. Back off or things get worse. Some people don't belong in first class or the C-suite. The racial undertones were unmistakable. This was no longer just about a seat on a plane. It was about power, privilege, and someone's determination to put him in his place. But they had underestimated Marcus Reynolds. He hadn't fought his way from the south side of Chicago to Harvard to the executive suite by backing down from bullies. The battle lines were drawn. But Marcus couldn't have anticipated just how dangerous his opponent would prove to be. While waiting in the airport security office, Marcus noticed a young Asian woman in an airline uniform glancing nervously in his direction. When the officers stepped out briefly, she approached him. "I'm Sophia Chen," she whispered. "I work customer service for Atlantair. What they did to you was wrong. I saw everything." Marcus straightened. "Would you be willing to make a statement?" Sophia looked over her shoulder. "I can do better than that." She slipped a folded paper into his jacket pocket. "My personal email. Contact me there. I have information." Before Marcus could ask more, the officers returned, and Sophia quickly retreated. An hour later, when Marcus was finally released, he found a quiet corner to examine what Sophia had given him. It wasn't just her email. It was a printout of an internal airline memo. The document outlined what the company euphemistically called passenger comfort protocols. Reading between the lines, it was clearly a directive for staff to prioritize the comfort of certain passengers, predominantly white, predominantly male, even at the expense of others. There were thinly veiled instructions about maintaining the expected atmosphere in premium cabins and addressing seating concerns from our highest value customers. Marcus immediately forwarded the document to Jamal and Layla. "This could be crucial evidence," he texted. He tried booking another flight to San Francisco, but every attempt showed him as unable to be confirmed at this time. His name had clearly been flagged in the system. "Mr. Reynolds." Marcus turned to find Sophia again, this time without her airline badge. "I'm on my break," she explained. "I thought you should know they're explicitly blocking you from flying. Today, I've seen them do this before to passengers who cause problems." "You're risking your job by helping me," Marcus observed. Sophia's expression hardened. "My parents came to this country believing in fairness and opportunity. What they did to you, it's happened before. There's a group of us who've been documenting these incidents, mostly against black passengers, but also Middle Eastern, Hispanic, anyone who doesn't fit their image." Marcus listened as Sophia explained how certain staff members had been informally trained to accommodate complaints from white passengers who didn't want to sit next to minorities in premium cabins. Those who refused to participate in this discrimination were relegated to less desirable routes or shifts. "We've tried reporting it through proper channels, but nothing changes," Sophia said. Some of us have been gathering evidence. I can put you in touch with others." Marcus was formulating a plan when he noticed Sarah Johnson walking through the terminal with 2 security guards. She spotted them and pointed. "You need to go," Marcus told Sophia. "They're coming this way." "Too late," Sophia replied as the security guards approached. "Ms. Chen, you're required to surrender your credentials immediately," one stated. "On what grounds?" Sophia demanded. "Violation of company confidentiality policies," Sarah Johnson replied coldly. "Security footage shows you passing unauthorized documents to Mr. Reynolds." The guard held out his hand. "Your ID badge and security pass, please." Sophia reluctantly removed her lanyard. "This isn't over," she told Sarah. "For you, it is," Sarah replied. 8 years of employment, terminated for cause. Good luck finding another airline job." As Sophia was escorted away, she called to Marcus. "Check your email." Sarah turned to Marcus with a satisfied smile. "You see what happens to people who help you? Think about that before you escalate this further." Marcus watched Sophia disappear into the crowd, another casualty in what was becoming a much larger battle than a disputed seat assignment. Have you ever witnessed someone risk everything to stand up for what's right? Comment number 1. If you've ever had to choose between staying silent or speaking up against injustice. Comment number 2. If you believe more people should have the courage Sophia showed. And if you believe in supporting those who risk everything for the truth, hit that subscribe button and join our community fighting for justice. But what happens when standing up against discrimination costs not just your job, but puts your entire future at risk? How far would powerful forces go to silence Marcus and anyone who supported him? By late afternoon, Marcus had retreated to an airport hotel, where he set up an impromptu command center in his room. With his San Francisco trip completely derailed, he had no choice but to conduct his investor meeting virtually. Layla had arranged a video conference with Westridge Capital for 6 o'clock. At 5:45, Marcus straightened his tie and logged into the meeting. He was surprised to see only 4 of the expected 7 partners on the call. "Marcus, how are you holding up?" asked Nathan Brooks, the lone black partner at Westridge. "We've all seen the videos." "I'm managing," Marcus replied professionally. "I apologize for the format change, but circumstances were beyond my control." The managing partner, Harold Westridge, cleared his throat. "Yes, well, perhaps we should address the elephant in the room. The incident has created some concerns among our partnership." Marcus maintained his composure. "I was discriminated against and removed from a flight without cause. I fail to see how that should impact your assessment of Innovate Tech's business potential." "It's not that simple," another partner interjected. "Our limited partners are very image-conscious. Association risks are a real consideration." Nathan Brooks unmuted himself. "What my colleagues are struggling to say, Marcus, is that some of our more conservative investors are worried about being connected to a company whose CEO is at the center of a racial controversy, regardless of who's at fault." Marcus felt the familiar burn of injustice. "So I'm penalized for being the victim of discrimination?" Harold shifted uncomfortably. 3 partners have recused themselves from this decision due to these concerns. We'll need to postpone our final investment determination. As the disappointment settled in, Nathan spoke again. "For what it's worth, I'm doubling my personal allocation to Innovate Tech. This incident only confirms what I already knew. You have the integrity and resilience we should be investing in." After the call ended, Marcus slumped in his chair. The $500 million deal that had seemed certain this morning was now in jeopardy. His phone pinged with an email notification from Sophia, sent from her personal account. She had gathered testimonials from 6 other airline employees about similar incidents and included a crucial piece of information. Atlantair was a subsidiary of Whitehaven Industries, a massive conglomerate with holdings in multiple sectors, including technology. Marcus searched for information about Whitehaven and found they had recently increased investments in AI companies competing directly with Innovate Tech. Could the airline incident be connected to business rivalries? His suspicions deepened when Layla called with troubling news. "Marcus, I've been doing some digging on Richard Whitman, the passenger who took your seat. He's not just a random traveler. He's executive vice president at Technovus, one of Whitehaven's technology holdings. The pieces were falling into place. This wasn't just racial profiling, it was corporate sabotage disguised as discrimination. Someone had deliberately identified Marcus's travel plans and orchestrated the entire incident to derail his investor meeting. "Get me everything on Whitehaven Industries," Marcus instructed Layla. "Board members, executives, subsidiaries, everything. And reach out to everyone who recorded videos on the flight. We need to control this narrative before they destroy my reputation completely." As Marcus formulated his response strategy, another email arrived, this one from Richard Whitman himself. "Mr. Reynolds," it read, "today's unfortunate incident could have been avoided with better communication. Perhaps we should discuss how to move forward productively. I'll be at the Capitol Grill at 8 p.m. if you'd care to join me." Was it a peace offering or a trap? Either way, Marcus realized he was dealing with forces more organized and determined than he had initially understood. His fight for justice had evolved into a battle for his company's survival. Marcus declined Richard Whitman's dinner invitation, instead using the evening to strategize with his executive team via video conference. They had just finished outlining their response plan when Marcus's phone buzzed with a news alert. Airline releases full video of CEO's aggressive behavior. The video playing on the news channel appeared to show Marcus raising his voice and pointing aggressively at flight attendants. But Marcus immediately recognized it was heavily edited. His calm responses had been cut out entirely, and certain moments had been slowed down to make normal gestures appear threatening. "They're manipulating the evidence," Marcus told his team. "Get our legal department to demand the raw footage immediately." Jamal Washington responded, "Already on it. But there's more. Innovate Tech's stock dropped 8% in after-hours trading. Someone's spreading rumors about federal investigations into our business practices." This coordinated assault was moving faster than Marcus had anticipated. He tried checking his company email but found his password had been changed. Attempts to reset it failed. The recovery phone number had been altered. "We're dealing with a sophisticated cyber attack," Innovate Tech's CTO confirmed after investigating. "Someone's trying to lock you out of your own company's systems." By morning, the situation had deteriorated further. Marcus attempted to board his rebooked flight to Atlanta, only to be stopped at the security checkpoint. "I'm sorry, sir," the TSA agent said, looking uncomfortable. "Your name has been flagged on a security watch list. You'll need to speak with a supervisor." After 90 minutes of questioning, Marcus was finally cleared to fly, but arrived at the gate just as the doors closed. The airline representative didn't bother hiding her satisfaction. "Next flight's not until tomorrow." Back at the hotel, Marcus found a plain envelope had been slid under his door. Inside was a printout of his home address, his wife's work schedule, and his children's school information, along with a simple message: "Back off." His family's safety now threatened, Marcus called home immediately. "Diana, take the kids and go to your sister's place. Don't tell anyone where you're going." "Marcus, what's happening?" his wife asked, clearly frightened. "I'm being targeted because of the airline incident. It's escalated beyond what I imagined." He explained the situation as calmly as possible. Diana was silent for a moment. "This is about more than a seat on a plane, isn't it?" "Much more," Marcus confirmed. "Someone wants to destroy everything we've built." As Diana packed to leave, Marcus received a call from Layla. "You need to see what's happening online," she said, urgently. A coordinated social media campaign had emerged overnight, questioning Marcus's leadership abilities and business ethics. Accounts that appeared legitimate but had been created just days earlier were sharing identical talking points about his anger issues and history of aggressive behavior. News outlets were picking up these fabricated stories, giving them legitimacy. Innovate Tech's VP of Technology called next. "Someone's trying to breach our client database. They're after our proprietary algorithms." This was no longer just character assassination, it was corporate warfare. Someone was using the racial incident as cover for a hostile takeover attempt. Marcus and his team traced the social media campaign to a PR firm specializing in reputation management and crisis communication. Further investigation revealed the firm had recently been acquired by, no surprise, a subsidiary of Whitehaven Industries. Just as Marcus was connecting these dots, his hotel room phone rang. "Mr. Reynolds," said the familiar voice of Richard Whitman. "I see you declined my dinner invitation. Unfortunate. Things are only going to get more difficult for you. But there's still a simple solution. Sell Innovate Tech to us at a fair price, and this all goes away." "So this is a shakedown," Marcus replied. "You orchestrated this entire situation to force me to sell my company." "Orchestrated? No. Opportunistic? Perhaps. The fact remains your position is weakening by the hour. Our offer won't remain open indefinitely." Marcus's response was calm but firm. "You picked the wrong person to intimidate, Mr. Whitman. I've faced discrimination my entire life. Your corporate bullying tactics won't work." "We'll see," Richard replied before hanging up. Within an hour, Marcus's personal bank accounts were frozen due to a fraud investigation. His credit score had mysteriously plummeted overnight, and Innovate Tech's 3 largest clients had received anonymous whistleblower letters alleging data security breaches. The systematic dismantling of Marcus's life and business was proceeding with ruthless efficiency. But Whitehaven and Richard Whitman had underestimated Marcus Reynolds' resilience and his network. Morning light filtered through the hotel curtains as Marcus reviewed documents with his newly assembled crisis team. Jamal Washington, head of legal, had flown in overnight with Innovate Tech's chief information security officer and 2 executive board members. "The discrimination complaints are filed," Jamal confirmed. "We have testimonies from 8 passengers and Sophia Chen's documentation. The judge granted an emergency hearing for tomorrow." Marcus nodded. "And our counteroffensive?" "In progress. We've identified the PR firm orchestrating the smear campaign and sent cease and desist orders. Our cybersecurity team is documenting all breach attempts. They all trace back to servers associated with Whitehaven subsidiaries." Their strategy session was interrupted by a news alert. Atlantair had filed a defamation countersuit against Marcus, claiming his false accusations of discrimination had damaged their reputation and stock price. "They're trying to drain our resources with legal battles," Jamal observed, "while simultaneously attacking our business," added board member Patricia Knowles. 3 of our banking relationships have been put under review overnight." Marcus's phone buzzed with a text from Sophia Chen. "Meeting tonight, 8 p.m., hotel lobby, bringing more evidence and witnesses." At precisely 8, Marcus spotted Sophia in the lobby with a manila envelope. She wasn't alone. 4 other airline employees had come with her, each with stories of systematic discrimination they'd witnessed. "This goes beyond individual incidents," explained Carlos Rodriguez, a 10-year veteran flight attendant. "It's company policy disguised as customer satisfaction priorities. We've been instructed to accommodate certain passengers even when they're clearly in the wrong." Sophia handed Marcus the envelope. "This is why I was really fired. I'd been collecting these internal communications for months. They show the airline explicitly profiling passengers by race and appearance." Marcus examined the documents. Internal memos, training materials with coded language, and emails between executives discussing maintaining the premium cabin atmosphere by strategic passenger placement. "Why come forward now?" Marcus asked the group. "Because you fought back," answered Sophia. "Most victims take the vouchers and disappear. You're making them face consequences." As the group discussed strategy, Marcus noticed a hotel security officer watching them intently. "We should move this conversation elsewhere," he suggested quietly. Too late. The security officer approached, accompanied by 2 men in suits. "Ms. Chen, these gentlemen have a restraining order prohibiting you from disparaging Atlantair or contacting their business associates." One of the suited men took the envelope from Marcus's hands. "This is company property you're illegally distributing." "That's evidence in a discrimination case," Marcus protested. "It's proprietary corporate information," the man countered, "and you're all in violation of confidentiality agreements." The airline employees were escorted out while Marcus was allowed to remain. He immediately called Jamal to report what had happened. "We need to move quickly," Jamal advised. "They're trying to suppress evidence. I'll file emergency motions tonight." Later that evening, as Marcus returned to his room after meeting with Jamal, he found someone had been there before. Him. His laptop was missing, and the physical copies of documents from his legal team were gone. The hotel's security footage mysteriously showed no one entering his room, despite the obvious break-in. When Marcus filed a police report, the responding officer seemed disinterested, suggesting he had misplaced the items himself. Things deteriorated further the next morning. Gibson, Morris, and Walters, the prestigious law firm representing Innovate Tech for years, suddenly withdrew as counsel. "I don't understand," Marcus told the senior partner over the phone. "We've been clients for a decade." "A conflict of interest has emerged," the partner explained uncomfortably. "It appears our firm also represents several Whitehaven subsidiaries. We should have caught this earlier." "This is about pressure from Whitehaven, isn't it?" Marcus challenged. The silence that followed was answer enough. Hours later, Jamal called with more disturbing news. "My car was broken into last night. All the physical case files were taken, including witness statements and the original copies of Sophia's documents. And our cloud backup of these files has been corrupted. The systematic elimination of evidence was underway. Every path to justice was being blocked by Whitehaven's seemingly unlimited influence. Have you ever felt the system was rigged against you? Comment number 1. If you believe powerful corporations have too much influence over our justice system. Comment number 2 if you think individuals can still win against corporate giants. And if you believe that exposing corruption is the first step to fighting it, hit that subscribe button to join our community seeking truth and accountability. But when all the rules seem to favor those with money and power, what chance does even a successful CEO like Marcus have against a corporate giant determined to destroy him? As his evidence disappears and allies are silenced, how can Marcus possibly prove his case? With his legal representation withdrawn and evidence disappearing, Marcus knew he needed a different approach. That morning, he called Zara Washington, an attorney known for taking on powerful corporate interests in civil rights cases. "They've created a perfect trap," Zara observed after reviewing what remained of Marcus's case. "By framing this as a simple customer service dispute that you're playing the race card on, they've made it difficult to prove the larger conspiracy." "So how do we fight back?" Marcus asked. "We need to expose the pattern," Zara replied. "One incident can be dismissed as a misunderstanding, but systematic discrimination across multiple subsidiaries? That's harder to hide." Zara's team began investigating Whitehaven Industries more deeply. What they uncovered was disturbing. Over the past 3 years, Whitehaven had acquired 15 companies founded by Black, Hispanic, and Asian entrepreneurs. In 13 cases, the original founders were forced out within months through similar pressure campaigns. They identify minority-owned businesses with valuable technology, orchestrate crises to devalue the companies, then acquire them at bargain prices, Zara explained. After acquisition, they replace diverse leadership with predominantly white executives. That's their playbook for Innovate Tech, Marcus realized. Richard Whitman wasn't just being racist when he took my seat. He was initiating their takeover strategy. As they developed their counter-strategy, Marcus received an unexpected call from Stanford Burke, Innovate Tech's lead investor. "Marcus, we need to talk. I'm hearing troubling things about the company's stability." "Stanford, this is all part of a coordinated attack. Whitehaven is trying to..." Burke interrupted. "I understand you believe that, but our fiduciary responsibility is to protect our investment. The board is calling an emergency meeting tomorrow. You should be prepared." The call ended, leaving Marcus with a sinking feeling. He asked Layla to research recent changes in Innovate Tech's investor lineup. Her findings confirmed his fears. 3 weeks ago, Venture West sold their 20% stake in Innovate Tech. The buyer used several shell companies, but we've traced ownership back to Somerset Holdings, a Whitehaven subsidiary, Marcus finished. "They already own a significant portion of my company. With this block of shares, combined with investors they could pressure, Whitehaven might have enough influence to remove Marcus as CEO, all orchestrated through a seemingly unrelated airline incident." That evening, Richard Whitman requested another meeting. Against Zara's advice, Marcus agreed, wearing a concealed recording device. They met in a private dining room at an exclusive club. Richard didn't bother with pleasantries. "The board meeting tomorrow won't go well for you," he stated flatly. "But there's still a civilized solution. Sell us your controlling interest for $70 million. You walk away wealthy, we get the AI technology we want, everyone wins." "Except your offer undervalues my shares by hundreds of millions," Marcus countered. "And you've orchestrated this entire situation, from taking my seat on that plane to corrupting my evidence, to force this outcome." Richard's smile was cold. "Prove it. Your discrimination claims look like the desperate accusations of an executive trying to distract from business failures. Meanwhile, our concerns about Innovate Tech's management are backed by falling stock prices and client departures. Situations we created, yes, but legitimate nonetheless. So you admit to market manipulation?" "I'm having a hypothetical discussion with a colleague," Richard replied smoothly. "But consider this. Even if you somehow survive tomorrow's board vote, we can continue this pressure indefinitely. Your family has already relocated for safety. How long before your employees start leaving? How many more clients will depart? How much more personal stress can you endure?" The threat was comprehensive and ruthless. Marcus realized Whitehaven didn't just want his company, they wanted to make an example of him, to demonstrate the consequences of resisting their acquisition strategy. $70 million is generous given the circumstances," Richard continued. "The offer expires at midnight." After Richard left, Marcus replayed the recording. Richard had been careful with his words, making implications but avoiding direct admissions. Still, it confirmed what Marcus had suspected. This was a calculated corporate takeover disguised as a racial incident. As midnight approached, Marcus faced the most difficult decision of his career. Fight a seemingly unwinnable battle against a corporate giant with unlimited resources, or take the money and walk away from everything he'd built. His phone buzzed with a text from Nathan Brooks at Westridge Capital. "Don't give up. Reinforcements coming." That cryptic message would have to be enough to sustain his faith through tomorrow's board meeting, a meeting that could end his career. The morning of the board meeting, Marcus arrived at Innovate Tech's Atlanta headquarters to find unusual security measures in place. His executive assistant, Layla, met him at a side entrance to avoid the reporters gathered out front. "They've been setting this up for days," she whispered, handing him a tablet. "Someone leaked false financial projections to the press. Our stock is down 22% since opening." Marcus scrolled through the reports, each more damaging than the last. Alleged algorithm failures, supposed client data breaches, anonymous, former employees claiming toxic leadership. "We need to postpone this meeting," Marcus told Layla. "Without time to disprove these allegations." "They won't allow a postponement," Layla interrupted. "Somerset Holdings representatives are already inside with proxies from 3 other major shareholders. They have the votes." As they walked toward the boardroom, Marcus's phone rang with an unknown number. "Mr. Reynolds," came Sophia Chen's voice. "I found others, not just from the airline, from across Whitehaven companies. Former employees who experienced or witnessed the same patterns. 15 of us are willing to testify about discriminatory practices." "That's exactly what, we need," Marcus replied. "Can you get statements before my board meeting?" "We're already working with Zara Washington. But Marcus, there's something else you should know. One of our group was attacked last night. 2 men followed her home, beat her, and told her to stay silent. She's in the hospital." Marcus stopped walking. "Are you safe?" "I'm being careful," Sophia replied, though her voice betrayed her fear. "We all are. But we won't be intimidated." The danger was escalating beyond corporate maneuvering to physical violence. These whistleblowers were putting everything on the line, their careers, their safety, potentially their lives, to stand against Whitehaven's practices. "Send everything you have to Zara immediately," Marcus instructed. "And please, stay safe." As Marcus entered the boardroom, he felt the hostile atmosphere immediately. Several board members avoided eye contact. 3 unfamiliar faces, Somerset Holdings representatives, watched him with calculated interest. Stanford Burke called the meeting to order without the usual pleasantries. Given recent developments, we're here to discuss leadership stability. At Innovate Tech, Mr. Reynolds has become a liability. For the next hour, Marcus defended himself against a barrage of allegations. The deck was clearly stacked against him. Every explanation he offered was met with skepticism or outright dismissal. Then came the technical disasters. The presentation he'd prepared overnight to counter the false allegations failed to load. The backup files were corrupted. The boardroom video system repeatedly malfunctioned when he tried to present evidence of Whitehaven's manipulation. This equipment was tested an hour ago. The IT director apologized, looking genuinely confused. As Marcus struggled with the sabotaged systems, he received a text from Zara. Whistleblower testimonies coming through. Powerful stuff. Hold on. But the board wasn't waiting. Stanford Burke moved for a vote of no confidence, a motion to remove Marcus as CEO. This is premature, Marcus objected. I have evidence that these problems are the result of coordinated corporate sabotage by Whitehaven Industries. More conspiracy theories, sighed one board member. Marcus, we understand this is difficult, but please maintain your dignity. The vote was about to proceed when the boardroom doors opened. Nathan Brooks from Westridge Capital entered, followed by two people Marcus didn't recognize. I apologize for the interruption, Nathan announced. But before this board makes a catastrophic mistake, you should hear what these individuals have to say. The newcomers introduced themselves as former Whitehaven executives who had witnessed similar takeover patterns at other companies. They detailed with remarkable precision how Whitehaven identified targets, created crises, manipulated stock prices, and forced founders out. The airline incident with Mr. Reynolds follows their playbook exactly, explained one whistleblower. We have documentation showing they've used this strategy at least 7 times in the past 2 years. The board members listened with growing concern. Even Stanford Burke seemed shaken by the specific allegations. Furthermore, Nathan added, Westridge Capital has been conducting its own investigation into unusual trading patterns around Innovate Tech stock. We've identified clear evidence of market manipulation coinciding precisely with Mr. Reynolds' airline incident. The Somerset Holdings representatives tried to dismiss these claims, but Nathan was prepared. He distributed packets of financial data showing suspicious trading patterns, all linked to Whitehaven subsidiaries. Gentlemen, Nathan addressed the board. You're being used as pawns in a corporate takeover disguised as a response to performance issues. Those performance issues were manufactured by the very people now offering to save the company by removing its founder. The momentum in the room had shifted dramatically. What had seemed like an inevitable vote to remove Marcus now faced serious resistance. Several board members who had been ready to vote against him now appeared uncertain. Stanford Burke, sensing the change, called for a recess. We need time to review this new information. As the board members filed out, Nathan approached Marcus. We've disrupted their timeline, but this isn't over. Whitehaven won't give up easily. Thank you, Marcus said sincerely. But how did you pull this together so quickly? Nathan's expression turned grim. Because they tried the same strategy with my previous company. I didn't fight back effectively and lost everything. I wasn't going to let it happen to someone else. When the board reconvened an hour later, the vote of no confidence was tabled pending further investigation. Marcus had survived, for now. But as he returned to his office, he found his access to critical systems still restricted. Key client relationships remained in jeopardy, and his presentation files for tomorrow's important client meetings were still mysteriously corrupted. The sabotage continued at every level. Someone had even broken into his executive assistant's computer and altered his schedule, making him miss a crucial client call that afternoon. That evening, as Marcus finally returned home, to a house now equipped with a security system and private guards, he found a plain envelope on his porch. Inside was a photo of his children at their new school, with a message. Nowhere is safe. These people had followed his family despite their relocation. The threat was clear. Back off, or your family pays the price. Marcus had won the battle at the board meeting, but the war was far from over. Whitehaven was escalating dangerously, and the next attack could come from any direction. The morning after the board meeting, Marcus convened an emergency session with his executive team, Zara Washington and Nathan Brooks. They gathered in a secure conference room that had been swept for surveillance devices. "They're coming after my family now," Marcus explained, sharing the threatening photo he'd received. "We need to end this decisively." Zara nodded grimly. "We're compiling testimonies from 23 former employees across 7 Whitehaven subsidiaries. The pattern is undeniable. They systematically target minority-owned businesses for hostile takeovers, using discrimination incidents as leverage." "That's powerful," Marcus acknowledged. "But Whitehaven has ways of silencing witnesses and suppressing evidence. We've seen that already." Nathan Brooks leaned forward. "Which is why we need to go bigger. These individual testimonies are compelling. But what if we could prove systematic discrimination across Whitehaven's entire corporate structure?" "How?" asked Marcus. "Data," Nathan replied simply. "My investment firm has access to leadership demographics across industries. We've been anonymously tracking diversity metrics for years. When we isolate Whitehaven acquisitions, a disturbing pattern emerges." Nathan opened his laptop and displayed a series of graphs. Across 63 acquisitions in the past decade, Whitehaven has reduced minority executive leadership by 87% within 1 year of acquisition. The data is statistically impossible to explain through normal turnover or performance issues. Marcus studied the charts. "This is exactly what we need, evidence that can't be dismissed as anecdotal." "There's more," Nathan continued. "We've identified unusual financial transactions suggesting Whitehaven creates artificial crises at target companies, shorting stocks before negative incidents occur, then purchasing shares at depressed prices. Market manipulation," Zara observed. "That's SEC territory." "Exactly," Nathan agreed. "Racial discrimination is hard to prove in individual cases, but financial fraud leaves a data trail that's much harder to erase." They developed a multi-pronged strategy. While Zara pursued the IGA discrimination lawsuits, Nathan would present evidence of financial manipulation to SEC investigators. Meanwhile, Marcus would focus on stabilizing Innovate Tech and protecting its core technology from Whitehaven's attempts to access it. The plan was set in motion just in time. That afternoon, Marcus received notification of an emergency board meeting called by Somerset Holdings representatives. The stated purpose: discussion of security vulnerabilities in Innovate Tech's AI algorithms. "They're trying another angle," Marcus told his team. "If they can't remove me directly, they'll claim our technology is compromised and needs to be secured by Whitehaven experts." When the board reconvened, Marcus was prepared. The Somerset representatives presented alarming but vague claims about potential security flaws in Innovate Tech's algorithms. They proposed bringing in independent experts to evaluate the system, experts who, unsurprisingly, worked for Whitehaven subsidiaries. Before the board could vote on this proposal, Marcus introduced Dr. Eleanor Tsung, a renowned cybersecurity expert who had conducted an independent audit of Innovate Tech's systems overnight. "I've found no significant vulnerabilities," Dr. Tsung reported. "In fact, Innovate Tech's security protocols exceed industry standards. However, I did identify multiple sophisticated intrusion attempts originating from IP addresses associated with Technovus, a Whitehaven subsidiary." The Somerset representatives looked stunned. Instead of Marcus defending against their accusations, they were now facing counter-allegations with concrete evidence. Stanford Burke, who had been wavering in his support, finally took a stand. "I move that we reject the proposal to bring in Whitehaven-affiliated security experts. Furthermore, I suggest we remove Somerset Holdings representatives from the board, pending investigation of potential conflicts of interest." The vote passed overwhelmingly. As the disgraced Somerset representatives left the boardroom, Marcus felt the first real victory since the airline incident. Back in his office, Marcus received an unexpected call from Richard Whitman. "Impressive maneuvering today," Richard said, his voice tight with controlled anger. "But this changes nothing. We still own a significant portion of your company. We can still make life difficult for you and your family." "Actually, Richard, things have changed significantly," Marcus replied calmly. "The SEC is now investigating unusual trading patterns around Innovate Tech stock. Federal investigators are reviewing evidence of corporate-directed discrimination across Whitehaven subsidiaries, and journalists from 3 major publications are preparing exposés on Whitehaven's predatory acquisition tactics." Silence hung on the line for several seconds. "You're bluffing," Richard finally said, but his voice lacked conviction. "Check your company's stock price," Marcus suggested. The first investigative piece had just been published online, a detailed examination of how Whitehaven systematically dismantled minority leadership across acquired companies. Whitehaven's stock had dropped 8% in the first hour after publication. "This can still be resolved," Richard offered, his tone now conciliatory. "We'll withdraw our interest in Innovate Tech. We'll ensure your family's safety. Just call off the investigations." "That's not how this works, Richard," Marcus replied. "You didn't just come after me or my company. You revealed a pattern of discrimination and financial manipulation that has harmed dozens of entrepreneurs and companies. This isn't about Innovate Tech anymore. It's about stopping Whitehaven from continuing these practices." After ending the call, Marcus sat back in his chair, allowing himself a moment of satisfaction. The tide was turning, but he knew better than to underestimate Whitehaven's resources and determination. That night, as Marcus finally returned home, to his family, who had moved back under increased security, he found a plain white envelope on his bed. His security team had no explanation for how it had bypassed their measures. Inside was a single sheet of paper with the message, "This isn't over. Not everyone has a price, but everyone has a breaking point. We'll find yours." The threat was clear. Despite today's victories, Whitehaven wasn't conceding. In fact, they might become even more dangerous as their normal tactics failed. Marcus held his sleeping children a little tighter that night, knowing the final battle still lay ahead. 1 month after the airline incident, Marcus Reynolds returned to Atlanta's Hartsfield-Jackson International Airport. This time, he wasn't alone. A team of attorneys from Zara Washington's firm accompanied him, along with several journalists and civil rights advocates. Nathan Brooks walked beside him, providing both moral support and the financial backing that had helped Marcus weather Whitehaven's attacks. "Are you sure about this?" Nathan asked as they approached the Atlantair check-in counter. "Flying with them again seems unnecessarily provocative." "That's exactly why I need to do it," Marcus replied. "If I avoid this airline, they win. The message becomes stay in your place or face consequences. I won't accept that." Marcus had booked the same flight, the same first-class seat as before. News of his return had spread, and camera crews positioned themselves throughout the terminal. This time, there would be no hidden discrimination. The world was watching. At the check-in counter, Marcus was greeted with exaggerated courtesy. His boarding pass was processed without question, and a manager appeared to personally escort him through security, without any random additional screening. As Marcus and his entourage proceeded to the gate, he noticed Richard Whitman watching from a distance, speaking intensely into his phone. Nearby stood Sarah Johnson, the regional manager who had threatened Marcus a month earlier. Her expression was a mixture of anger and resignation. The gate area fell silent as Marcus approached. Passengers recognized him from the news coverage that had dominated headlines for weeks. Some nodded respectfully, others looked uncomfortable. Just as boarding was about to begin, a group of airline executives in formal business attire arrived at the gate. The lead executive approached Marcus with a practiced smile. "Mr. Reynolds, I'm Jeffrey Wilson, Chief Operations Officer for Atlantair. On behalf of our entire company, I want to personally apologize for your experience last month. The employees involved have been terminated, and we've implemented new training programs to prevent such incidents in the future." Marcus recognized the carefully crafted public relations statement for what it was: damage control, not genuine remorse. "Thank you, Mr. Wilson," Marcus replied loudly enough for nearby passengers and journalists to hear. "But I'm concerned your apology addresses only the symptom, not the disease." According to testimony from your own employees, this wasn't an isolated incident, but part of a systematic pattern of discrimination. Wilson's smile faltered. I assure you, we take these allegations very seriously. So seriously that you fired the whistleblowers who exposed them? Marcus challenged. So seriously that your parent company, Whitehaven Industries, has spent millions trying to silence them and destroy my company? The executive glanced nervously at the recording. Journalists, perhaps we could discuss this privately. No, Marcus stated firmly. Discrimination thrives in private. Accountability requires transparency. As this confrontation unfolded, commotion erupted at the terminal entrance. Federal agents were entering, led by a woman in a suit who Marcus recognized from meetings with Zara Washington, Assistant U.S. Attorney Kamala Rodriguez, who specialized in corporate fraud and civil rights violations. The agents moved purposefully toward Richard Whitman, who was attempting to leave discreetly. Two agents intercepted him while others approached Sarah Johnson and several Whitehaven executives who had gathered nearby. Agent Rodriguez walked directly to Marcus. Mr. Reynolds, thank you for your cooperation in this investigation. Your evidence was instrumental. She turned to address the stunned airline executives. We have warrants for several individuals on charges, including witness intimidation, corporate espionage, market manipulation, and civil rights violations. Richard Whitman was being handcuffed, his face ashen with shock. This is a mistake, he protested as cameras captured his humiliation. I'm an executive vice president at Technovus. Yes, we know exactly who you are, Rodriguez replied coolly. And we have recordings of you threatening Mr. Reynolds and his family, among other criminal activities. The scene that unfolded was the culmination of weeks of careful evidence gathering. While Whitehaven had been focused on destroying Marcus publicly, he and his allies had been working with federal investigators, documenting the company's illegal activities across multiple subsidiaries. Sophia Chen emerged from the crowd, now flanked by other whistleblowers. They had risked everything to stand against corporate discrimination, and their courage was finally being rewarded. As the federal agents led the arrested executives away, Marcus approached the boarding gate. I believe it's time to board, he said to the gate agent, who quickly scanned his pass with newfound respect. Walking down the jetway, Marcus felt the weight of the past month lifting. The battle had exacted a tremendous toll on his company, his family, and himself personally. Innovate Tech's stock had taken hits, valuable partnerships had been delayed, and the stress had left visible marks on his face. But the victory was worth the cost. The Whitehaven investigation had expanded to encompass dozens of subsidiaries and executives. Class action lawsuits were being filed by entrepreneurs who had lost their companies to similar tactics. Regulatory agencies were reviewing years of Whitehaven acquisitions for patterns of discrimination and market manipulation. Marcus took his seat in 2A, the same seat from which he'd been removed a month earlier. As other passengers boarded, many nodded in recognition or offered quiet words of support. The airline staff treated him with careful courtesy, hyper-aware of the scrutiny they now faced. As the plane prepared for takeoff, Marcus gazed out the window at the federal agents still visible in the terminal. Justice was complex and imperfect, often requiring extraordinary effort from those wronged. But today, at least, the system had worked. His phone buzzed with a message from Layla. Westridge Capital just confirmed the full $500 million investment. Nathan convinced their board unanimously. A moment later, another text arrived. This one from Zara. 28 whistleblowers now. Justice Department expanding investigation to 3 more Whitehaven subsidiaries. Marcus smiled as he switched his phone to airplane mode. The immediate crisis was over, but the work of creating lasting change was just beginning. Innovate Tech would use part of its new funding to establish a foundation supporting minority entrepreneurs facing discrimination and predatory tactics. Sophia Chen had accepted a position heading a new industry watchdog organization focused on corporate accountability and diversity. And Marcus himself had been invited to testify before Congress on discriminatory practices in corporate America. As the plane accelerated down the runway, Marcus reflected on how a single act of discrimination had exposed an entire system of corporate corruption. His refusal to accept his place had not only saved his company, but sparked a movement that would protect countless others. The plane lifted into the sky, carrying Marcus toward San Francisco and the investor meeting that had been delayed but never defeated. He had weathered the storm and emerged stronger. But he remained vigilant, knowing that the fight against discrimination was never truly won, only pushed forward by those brave enough to stand their ground. The story of Marcus Reynolds illustrates powerful truths about modern discrimination and corporate accountability. First, racism often operates systemically, disguised as policy or procedure rather than explicit bigotry. Second, standing against discrimination requires extraordinary courage, as those who benefit from unjust systems will fight fiercely to maintain their advantage. Third, meaningful change rarely comes from individual action alone. It requires allies, whistleblowers, and advocates willing to risk their own security for justice. Fourth, documentation and evidence are crucial. Without Sophia's collected internal memos and the whistleblowers' testimonies, Marcus might have lost everything. Fifth, discrimination isn't just morally wrong, but often masks other corrupt practices. Finally, the story reminds us that one person's refusal to accept injustice can expose entire systems of corruption and create lasting change. Marcus didn't just save his seat or his company, he sparked a movement that would protect countless others facing similar discrimination. What would you have done in Marcus's position? Would you have quietly accepted the airline's vouchers to avoid conflict, or would you have fought back against the injustice like he did? Comment below with your thoughts on how you would handle discrimination in your own life. Have you ever witnessed or experienced discrimination that was disguised as policy or procedure? Share your story to help others recognize these subtle forms of racism. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to our channel for more powerful narratives that expose injustice and celebrate those brave enough to stand against it. Thank you for watching, and remember, justice often requires courage in the face of overwhelming opposition. Together, we can create a world where no one is judged by their appearance, but by the content of their character.